Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're diving into the chilling story of Rosario, a horror tale centered around a young woman named Rose, who discovers her family has been hiding a terrifying secret. After her grandmother passes away, Rose learns that a demon named Kobiande has been kept at bay for generations through blood rituals. As she digs deeper, she realizes someone in her own family played a disturbing role in all of it. Before we jump in, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's roll the intro. The film opens in Brooklyn in the year 1999. A young girl named Rosario, often called Rose, arrives at her grandmother's house with her parents to celebrate her 10th birthday. The house is full of relatives and the atmosphere is lively. Rose is especially close to her father, who comforts her, saying that even though it was hard for them to come to Brooklyn, things are finally going to get better. He promises her the life he and her mother had always dreamed of giving her. Rose's family immigrated from Mexico and had entered the United States without documentation, holding on to hope for a better future. As the birthday celebration unfolds, it becomes clear that Rose's mother is seriously ill. She asks Rose to go find her grandmother. When Rose walks to her grandmother's room, she finds it empty, but senses movement in the shadows. In the corner, barely visible, something or someone is moving. While looking around, Rose opens the wardrobe and discovers a piece of blood-stained cloth. She stares at it, confused and frightened, when suddenly her grandmother walks in. Rose asks her to come out and join the others, but then notices her grandmother's hands are bleeding. When she questions it, her grandmother dismisses it without explanation and quietly tells Rose to leave the room. The scene then cuts back to the birthday party, where the family continues to celebrate, seemingly unaware of anything unusual. The story then jumps to the present day. Rose is now an adult, living in Manhattan and working as a stockbroker on Wall Street. She's built a successful life, but the past she tried to leave behind isn't finished with her. The contrast between Rose's current life and her childhood is stark. She once lived in a modest home with her immigrant family, facing constant challenges and uncertainty. Now she's surrounded by sleek offices, a luxury apartment, and financial stability. Her world may look different, but the shadows of her past are beginning to resurface, and what she uncovers will shake her to the core. That same morning, Rose's grandmother had been trying to reach her. She called several times, but Rose, caught up in the hustle of her busy schedule, kept ignoring the calls. Her fast-paced professional life had become all-consuming, leaving little room for anything else. When Rose finally arrives at her office, she's greeted by the building's security guard, a warm, friendly Latin American man who clearly knows her well. He gently asks if she could help him secure a loan. Rose listens kindly, but turns him down with professional courtesy. She explains that company policy prohibits her from assisting with personal loans, and more importantly, he doesn't meet the specific eligibility criteria for the type he's requesting. In a calm and respectful tone, she lets him know that unfortunately, he wouldn't qualify for what's referred to as the main shot loan. After their brief exchange, Rose takes the elevator up to her office and gets back to work. Outside, the weather is quickly deteriorating. Snow begins to fall steadily, and before long, it escalates into a full-on snowstorm. Local news stations start issuing storm warnings, urging residents to head home early and stay safe. Later that evening, just as Rose is preparing to leave the office, her phone rings again. It's her driver, calling to say that the car is stuck in heavy traffic due to the storm and won't be able to reach her anytime soon. With the roads gridlocked and no other viable option, Rose decides to take the subway instead, a decision that will unknowingly lead her into something far more terrifying than she could ever anticipate. As she heads toward the station, her phone rings once more. This time, she answers. On the line is a man from her grandmother's apartment building. He tells Rose that her grandmother has passed away. The news hits her hard. He asks her to come to the building to retrieve the body. Rose immediately calls her father, who now lives several hours from Brooklyn. He tells her it'll take about 3 to 4 hours for him to get there, and urges her to wait, not wanting his mother's body to be left alone. But Rose insists. She'll go to the apartment herself and wait for him there. It's then revealed that Rose's parents had divorced years ago, and her mother had passed away after a long illness. During their separation, Rose had emotionally sided with her father, distancing herself from her mother in part because it was too painful to watch her deteriorate. After her mother's death, Rose never returned to her grandmother's home, unable to face the grief. She carried a deep sense of guilt over that decision, but her father reassures her. No one ever blamed her. Everyone just wanted her to succeed. While riding the subway, Rose sees something that stops her cold. Her mother, standing on the platform. It can't be. Her mother is dead. The ghostly sight shakes her to the core, hinting at something supernatural, something far beyond what she's prepared to handle. tunnel. She continues on toward her grandmother's apartment as the snowstorm intensifies and the streets grow eerily quiet. Rose is being pulled back into a past she thought she'd left behind, and something is waiting for her in the dark. Rose arrives at her grandmother's building and is escorted up to the apartment by the building janitor, Janet. Janet respectfully informs her that she covered her grandmother's body with a sheet. The apartment is in terrible condition, dirty, disorganized, and filled with an unsettling, heavy energy. Janet notices that the candles in the room are somehow lit again, even though he had already extinguished them earlier. He quickly blows them out and lets Rose know that he's already called for an ambulance. After that, Janet quietly exits, leaving Rose alone in the apartment. As Rose moves through the space, she comes across some old childhood photos, triggering a wave of memories. In the kitchen, she notices a sink full of dirty dishes. Strangely, they're all warm, as if they'd just been used or reheated. Forcing herself to clean up, she throws them out, then sits silently beside her grandmother's body. That's when she sees something horrifying, deep gashes all over her grandmother's skin. Moments later, the apartment begins to shake violently, as if rocked by an earthquake. But just as suddenly, everything falls still again. Leaning in closer, Rose notices blood and worms oozing from her grandmother's nose. Horrified, she grabs a paper towel and tries to clean it up. When she tosses the towel away, one of the worms pierces through her palm and begins burrowing under her skin. It slithers up her arm to her neck and then toward her ear. Panicked, she manages to pull it out just in time, but the entire experience leaves her nauseous and visibly shaken. Desperate for answers, Rose searches her grandmother's bedroom. Inside the closet, she finds the same blood-stained cloth she had seen years ago. Behind the hanging clothes, she discovers a hidden compartment, partially obstructed by an animal skull and a locked door. Just as she tries to process what she's found, there's a knock at the front door. It's a neighbor, casually asking to borrow his air fryer. His demeanor is oddly relaxed, almost too normal for the situation. Rose, unsettled, refuses to let him in. Before he leaves, he comments that she should put a bandage on her injured hand. As she shuts the door, she notices something chilling, a strange symbol carved into the palm of his hand, the exact same one etched into her grandmother's body. Turning back to her grandmother's body, Rose notices something unusual, a small, old-fashioned key tied to her grandmother's leg with a piece of fraying string. Instantly, she recalls the locked closet door and feels certain the key must open it. Her nerves tight, she unties the key and walks slowly toward the closet. Her heart races as she unlocks the door and steps inside. What she finds is nothing short of disturbing. It's a hidden ritual room, dark, cold, and untouched for what feels like decades. The space is filled with unsettling objects, animal skulls arranged with care on dusty shelves, handmade voodoo dolls pierced with rusty needles, bizarre tools marked with strange symbols, and a large glass jar filled with thick black liquid that seems to move, as if something inside is still alive. The air is heavy with the scent of blood, dried herbs, and ancient decay. But what Rose finds next is the most disturbing of all. In one corner of the room, she sees personal items, belongings that unmistakably once belonged to her. There's the same outfit she wore in her 10th birthday photo, a small container holding her baby teeth, strands of her hair tied with a ribbon, and even a copy of that same birthday picture. It hits her like a punch to the gut. These weren't just childhood keepsakes. They were used as part of some dark ritual. The realization makes her stomach turn. Overwhelmed and horrified, she drops to her knees and vomits right there on the floor. As she struggles to catch her breath, a strange gurgling sound suddenly rises from the large jar. The black liquid inside begins to bubble and churn, as if something inside is waking up. Terrified, Rose scrambles backward. The lights in the apartment flicker violently, casting eerie, fragmented shadows that seem to move on their own. The entire atmosphere shifts. It feels like the apartment itself is alive and watching her. Panicking, Rose bolts from the ritual room and makes a run for the front door. Outside, the storm has intensified. Snow slams down in thick sheets, and the wind howls like a living creature. The building's janitor spots her fleeing and rushes to stop her. He pleads with her not to go out, warning that it's too dangerous. But she's too frightened to listen. Overcome by fear, she disappears into the storm, desperate to escape whatever is happening inside that apartment. There are no taxis. The streets are deserted. With no other options, she heads toward the subway, hoping to blend into the crowd, but she never makes it that far. In the dimly lit subway tunnel, something attacks her without warning. A terrifying figure, twisted, fast, and monstrous, grabs her. In a moment of sheer horror, Rose sees the face of her dead mother on the creature, as if the demon is using her mother's image to torment her. She screams, kicks, and fights to break free. Somehow, she manages to escape its grasp and crawl up from the tracks, bleeding, bruised, and barely conscious. By some miracle, she drags herself back to to her grandmother's building, terrified beyond belief. What began as a simple visit has become a waking nightmare, and it's only the beginning. Collapsed near the staircase, she pulls out her phone, her hands trembling. She starts frantically searching online for answers, typing in anything she can think of: voodoo, witchcraft, demonic possession. She's desperate to understand what's happening to her. While digging through pages of occult material, Rose stumbles across a reference to Palo Mayombe, a dark spiritual tradition that some refer to as a religion. It centers around a sacred vessel known as a nganga, often mistaken for a cauldron or drinking pot. The nganga is believed to house powerful spirits that can be summoned and controlled by its practitioner. These practitioners, known as paleros, perform intense rituals that often involve blood offerings and spiritual possession. As Rose continues reading, she discovers that the strange symbol on her hand is actually a loan mark, a spiritual debt signature. Horrified, she immediately calls her father and tells him everything. She's convinced her grandmother had been practicing dark magic on her since she was a child, and before she died, passed that debt on to her. But her father insists otherwise. He tells Rose that her grandmother was a curandera, a healer, not some dark magician. He says she spent her life helping people and would never have hurt Rose. Still, Rose can't shake the feeling that this is some form of punishment, a twisted revenge for choosing her father over her mother, or for never visiting after her mother passed away. Her father pleads with her not to take any more risks. He urges her to leave the apartment and come home, but Rose doesn't listen. Instead, she returns to the secret ritual room and begins dragging the nganga, the cursed vessel, toward her grandmother's body. Suddenly, a demonic entity appears and attacks her. Rose narrowly escapes and manages to place the nganga next to her grandmother's body. As she searches the room again, she finds an old ritual book that explains how to break the curse. According to the book, to lift a spiritual debt curse, the victim must mix her own blood with the blood of the palero who cast it. Rose slices her grandmother's hand, but nothing comes out. No blood. At that moment, the demonic entity reappears and lunges at her. In desperation, Rose manages to force both their blood into the nganga, and as she does, her grandmother's body begins to rise. Terrified, Rose hides under the bed. But the demon isn't finished. It keeps coming, this time in the form of her late mother. In her mother's voice, the entity accuses Rose. "I did everything for you and you left me. Why?" It blames her for abandoning the family to chase a better life. It tells her she ran away so she wouldn't have to witness her mother's illness, her slow death. As it speaks, it spits a foul liquid at her. Rose crawls out from under the bed, trembling and soaked in the vile substance. As she tries to clean herself off, there's a knock at the door. It's Joe, the neighbor, asking once again for his air fryer. Fed up, Rose snaps at him. She can't wrap her head around why her traditional Mexican grandmother would even own an air fryer. Joe, calm but firm, tells her she clearly didn't know her grandmother at all because she never came to visit. He reveals that he and her grandmother were close. She used to pray for him every single day. Not just for him, but for Rose too, for her happiness and her success. That moment finally breaks through. Everything begins to fall into place. When Rose asks Joe how he knows about what's been happening, he looks at her with quiet seriousness and says something that sends chills down her spine. Her grandmother had been speaking to him through the walls. Joe doesn't say anything else. He just turns and walks away, leaving Rose standing frozen, shaken, overwhelmed by everything she's just realized. She finally understands. Her grandmother never cursed her. She wasn't trying to hurt her or hold her back. In fact, it had been the opposite all along. Her grandmother had been protecting her, even if it meant sacrificing herself. Every strange thing Rose had misunderstood, the rituals, the bleeding, the locked door, they were all part of her grandmother's desperate effort to keep something far more dangerous away from her. Heart pounding, Rose rushes back to the apartment and heads straight to the ritual room. Everything is exactly as she left it. The voodoo doll still rests in the same spot, but this time, something is different. There's a folded note placed beside the doll. Hands trembling, she picks it up and begins to read. The note reveals the horrifying truth. Years ago, her grandmother struck a deal with a powerful demon named Kobiande. The pact was dark but simple. In exchange for Rose's future, her success, her career, her wealth, and everything good that would come, Kobiande would one day return to collect his reward. That reward was Rose's life. The agreement came with a condition. Once Rose reached the peak of her success, once she had everything she'd ever dreamed of, the demon would come back. He would appear in the form of a ghost, a terrifying, vengeful spirit, and begin tormenting her. And before the next sunrise, he would take her life. For the first time, Rose sees it clearly. Her grandmother wasn't the enemy. She was the shield. And now that she's gone, the demon is coming. The note also explains that the only way to break the pact is for the Polero, in this case her grandmother, to offer their body to Kobayande. By placing the Polero's blood into the Nganga, the demon could possess the already dead body, rendering him powerless. Now armed with this knowledge, Rose is overwhelmed. Panic sets in. She doesn't know what to do, but then she makes a choice. She will summon Kobayande, lure him into her grandmother's corpse, and trap him there for good. Wrapping herself in her grandmother's old shawl, Rose begins the ritual, following the instructions from the ancient book. Just then, the ambulance Janet had called earlier arrives. But Rose, now deep in the ritual, can't let them take the body. She hides her grandmother's corpse and continues the summoning. Suddenly, Kobayande appears, disguised as her mother, and attacks. Rose barely escapes. By the time she regains her bearings, the ambulance and the janitor are gone. Determined, Rose drags her grandmother's body back into the hidden ritual room and restarts the process. But just as she begins, a grotesque hand bursts from her grandmother's mouth, slamming her to the ground. Rose hits her head and blacks out. When she wakes, the apartment is bathed in a warm golden light. Standing before her is her mother, healthy, calm, and full of love. Rose is stunned, but her mother gently reassures her. She tells Rose she's proud of her, that she never blamed her for anything. Everything she and her grandmother did, it was all for Rose's future. Rose breaks down, overwhelmed with guilt, as she tearfully apologizes for neglecting her family after finding success. It's a deeply emotional moment, until it takes a sinister turn. Rose suddenly realizes, too late, that the woman before her isn't her mother. It's Kobayande, using her mother's image to manipulate her. But this time, Rose doesn't fall for it. Refusing to be deceived, she grabs the ritual book, recites the incantation, and successfully forces the demon back into the corpse. Her grandmother's body absorbs Kobayande, trapping him for good. By the next morning, the apartment seems almost normal again. Rose's father finally arrives, and paramedics take her grandmother's body away. Now, free from the guilt that had haunted her, Rose reflects on everything and finally understands. The women in her life had never cursed her. They had sacrificed everything to protect her, to give her strength. She honors her grandmother's memory, flipping through childhood birthday photos, smiling, until something makes her freeze. In one picture, she spots a detail she'd never noticed before: her father, with blood on his hands. Alarmed, she searches the apartment and finds him in the ritual room, standing beside the Nganga, and then the film delivers a devastating twist. Her father calmly confesses that on Rose's 10th birthday, he had been consumed by anxiety over her future. He knew about his mother-in-law's Palo Mayombe practices and had discovered the secret ritual room. In a moment of desperation, he took her grandmother's book and began performing the ritual himself, trying to strike the very deal that would guarantee Rose's success. But before he could finish the summoning, Rose's grandmother caught him in the act. In a heartbreaking reveal, Rose learns the final truth. It wasn't her grandmother who made the deal with Kobayande. It was her father. Years ago, in his desperation to secure a future for Rose, he summoned the demon. Her grandmother intervened just in time, taking control of the ritual and offering her own blood as a sacrifice to bind Kobayande inside the Nganga. She willingly trapped the demon, not to gain power, but to protect Rose and to atone for her son-in-law's reckless mistake. For years, in secret, she continued performing the blood ritual, gradually weakening herself until it finally killed her. And when she died, no one was left to hold the demon back. That's why Kobayande returned, to finish what had been started so long ago. Rose's father, now racked with guilt, looks at her with tearful eyes. His voice trembles as he apologizes. He admits that everything, the pain, the danger, it all happened in part because of him. He says he never had the courage to face the truth or carry on the ritual her grandmother began. But now, he swears he'll set things right. Like her grandmother, he promises to take on the burden himself, to offer his blood each day and keep the demon sealed inside the Nganga. Rose looks him in the eye and asks one final question: have you already added your blood to the Nganga? He freezes, his expression hardens, and he doesn't answer right away. The silence stretches, just long enough to confirm her worst fear. Then, without warning, his face begins to twist. Horribly, unnaturally. His features contort in a grotesque transformation, and his eyes darken. darken, no longer his own. Something else is looking through them. That's when Rose realizes the horrifying truth. Kobayande has possessed her father. Remember, the book clearly stated that to break the original pact, the Polero, the one who made the deal, must willingly offer both their blood and body. And in this case, the Polero wasn't Rose's grandmother. It was her father. The moment his blood made contact with the Nganga, Kobayande saw his chance and took over his body. The transformation is instant. Now fully possessed, her father charges at Rose. A brutal chase unfolds throughout the apartment. They fight fiercely until out of nowhere, Joe, the neighbor, bursts in and attacks Kobayande with his air fryer. Yes, the air fryer he had been asking about earlier. Sadly, Joe doesn't make it. Kobayande kills him, but Rose, driven by desperation and strength, manages to gain the upper hand. In one final heartbreaking act, she kills her father, now completely overtaken by the demon, to end the nightmare once and for all. The story then jumps ahead 6 months. We see the same security guard from the beginning of the film, the one Rose once refused to help with alone, but now things are different. Rose is helping him. She's reconnected with her roots and embraced her cultural heritage with pride. In her office, there's a framed photo of her entire family. Beside it, a candle stays lit, honoring their memory. Everything seems calm, peaceful, until suddenly, Rose starts coughing, hard, violently, and then, in one final chilling twist, a blackened hand bursts out of her mouth. Kobayande isn't gone. Cut to black. And that was the story of Rosario. So that was the full breakdown, along with all the theories behind Rosario. If you've still got questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and share. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We've got plenty more videos like this coming your way.